around 2 minutes. Still expecting a few more students to join. Okay, I think we can get started. So thanks a lot everyone for joining this webinar. We'll be recording the session and we'll be sending you all emails of the recording mostly by tomorrow evening. In case I can see some messages on the chat regarding the SciML webinar. In case some of you have not received the recordings for that, we'll share those with you also. So let's get started. Today's webinar is about grad school application and all the things which you need to know to really master these applications. So before we get started, there is actually a form which I'll share on the group, and this is just for us to tailor the webinar accordingly during the session. And it asks some basic questions such as when are you planning to apply and these things. So can you just fill out this form? I'll come back to it later when I'm speaking at a particular slide. But meanwhile, if you can quickly fill out this form, it will be nice. So let's get started with today's webinar. We are Team Videsh and we have conducted many such webinars in the past. In case you have already attended those webinars, it's great. This can serve as a good time for you to really understand the material which we cover. In case you are attending these webinar for the first time and you are hearing from us for the first time, let me quickly introduce ourselves. So my name is Dr. Raj. Here is my twin brother, Dr. Dr. Rajat, and here is Dr. Shridat, whom we all know and are very good friends for the past 10 plus years now. So all of us graduated from IIT Madras in 2017, 2018, and then we applied for grad school. So when we applied for grad school, we got admits into universities like MIT, Stanford, Purdue, Michigan, UIUC, CMU, ETH Zurich. And then me and Dr. Sridhar chose to do our PhDs at MIT, and Dr. Rajat chose to do his PhD at Purdue. So we finished our PhDs in 2022, and then we came back to India. So here is some of our photos during our PhD journey. And it is through this journey that we really understood the importance of doing research. So throughout all of our webinars, we really have a very, very strong emphasis on doing research, publishing at conferences, then publishing in journals, etc. When we were applying to grad school, we did not understand the value of research really. But it was only after coming back from our PhD that we realized it. And in all of our webinars, research is a core theme. So in 2022, we actually came back to India, and now our whole mission is to help students such as yourself get into your dream universities. When we were applying to grad school, we did not receive good guidance. In fact, that was a very stressful experience. So we had to really contact a lot of seniors. Sometimes they did not reply. There were no webinars like these. So when we came back, we decided that we should bridge that gap. And through such webinars, we can pass on our knowledge to you in a very streamlined manner. So today's webinar is also part of this mission. In today's webinar, we have a very focused agenda. So essentially, we will be covering these 10 items. So I encourage all of you to be proactive in the chat and ask questions. So since the size of this webinar is pretty large, we won't be taking questions through voice, but we will be answering all of your questions on chat. So please ask questions as and when they arise. Towards the end, we will also have a short Q&A section. So in case some questions are not answered till that time, we will cover that in the last section. So we have these many things to cover today. First, we'll talk about the basics of grad school application. Then we will talk about university shortlisting, statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, resume preparation, GRE, research profile, and the long-term mentorship. I'm assuming people in this call are from wide variety of fields, students, working professionals in the middle of their career transition. So this webinar is meant for all of you. It's fine if you're applying to graduate school this year, next year, or sometime later. I'll come to the form which you all have filled to see the responses. Please try to take as much as you can from this webinar and ask questions in the chat. So let's get started. In my part, I'll be talking for around 20 minutes and I'll be covering three sections. The first section is the basics of grad school application and the decisions you need to make in this journey. And then we'll start with the documents such as university shortlisting and statement of purpose. Okay, let's get started. The first is that before you even think of applying to grad school, you need to make certain decisions. The first decision which you need to make is whether you want to go for a master's or PhD. The second decision which you need to make is whether you want to go for fall or spring. The third decision is basically getting all of your documents in shape. So in previous webinars, we just covered this slide, but from today's webinar, I'll be discussing this slide through this Excel sheet. And I'll be sharing this Excel sheet with all of you right now. But before that, I just want to see the responses here so that I get an understanding of the basically split in the webinar today. So we can see that in the audience, there are 61 students, about 64%. And then the rest is split between working professionals, BTech graduates, master student, research fellow, etc. That's fine. And here we can see that around 77% of the audience is planning to apply for fall 2025 and 12% for fall 26. Not yet decided is 11% and 1% for spring 2025. Awesome. So most of the students are basically applying for fall 25 and 26. Masters or PhD, 52% PhD. You're planning to apply for PhD, 37% are planning to apply for masters, and 10% are confused or not decided. Half of you have started shortlisting universities, half of you roughly have started making documents, and half of you have started on the research publications. So this is the perfect time for all of you to attend this webinar because now is really the time to start making all these things. And we should really do this in a structured manner. So for all of you right now who are planning to apply for fall 25, 26, can you go to this Excel sheet right now? This will also assist you after this webinar is over to make certain decisions in the grad school application process. So let me walk you through this sheet. And usually people don't have a structured way of making these decisions, and that makes the whole process harder for them. So essentially, you have to make these 4 decisions. The first decision is which year do you want to apply to? And this answer can depend on many things. If you're stuck in your job right now, or if you really want to explore a new culture, or you just want to transition from a student to being from a student who has graduated from Indian college to doing his or her master's or PhD in the US, or if you're a working professional, you want to upskill yourself so that you can have a salary hike. Whatever the reason, you need to first decide which year do you really want to apply to. The second thing you need to decide is master's or PhD. So I can see here that around 55% of you have decided for a PhD. One thing which I really want all of you to think about is that a PhD is a long commitment. All three of us, me, Rajat, and Shridat, have done our PhDs, and you have to spend 5 years on one research problem. So ask yourself these questions if you are planning to do a PhD. Do you have research experience? I assume all of you who are in this 50% bucket do have research experience. If not, if you have never done research, you should definitely not consider applying for a PhD. It's a big commitment. If you have done research, ask yourself, do you love doing research? Do you imagine yourself being in academia? Can you spend 5 years, the next 5 years of your life on one research problem? Ask yourself these questions. And if you love doing research and if you imagine yourself being in academia, you love the process of doing research, then PhD is the perfect path for you. But if your answer to any of these questions is I don't know what the research process is, or 5 years sounds a lot, I don't know if I'll lose my interest or not, then a master's is a less riskier option, because after you do a master's, you can upgrade to a PhD or you can switch to a job. Those options always remain open for you. But a PhD is a long commitment, and I learned this the hard way. I randomly applied for a PhD. Actually, I applied because of this fifth point. So the main thing here is that funding, right? If you apply for a master's, typically it's the loan of 50,000 to 60,000 US dollars. That's around the cost, and it's difficult to get scholarships for masters for international students. PhDs, on the other hand, are almost fully funded. So I applied for a PhD mostly because of the funding issue, and it was fully funded. I did not have to spend a single dollar for my PhD education at MIT. But for masters, you would have to think of loan. So also ask yourself this question, that if I am going for masters, am I ready for a loan? For all of these people in this 36% category, ask yourself this question, because getting funding for masters for international students is not easy. Then fall or spring. So I can see here that almost all of you are planning to apply for fall, and that is, so here I can see 77% are applying for fall. This 1% are applying for spring. So I want to ask these people, what is the reason behind applying for spring? Any specific reason? The reason is because most of the students apply for fall, and it's usually the better option because the intake for fall is larger and the internship season aligns perfectly when summertime comes. But if you apply for spring, your internship season will come during winter time when not many companies are coming to campus. So please make all of these decisions in a careful manner. Don't randomly make these four decisions. They will determine the next 4 to 5 years of your life. Then after you have made these decisions, then you need to make these documents: university shortlisting, statement of purpose, resume, and letter of recommendation. In most of these documents, start right now. Right now is the best place to start. We need to start with the university shortlisting and then move to this rest three. If you have not started right now, don't make it late till November. It becomes very late because December is usually the deadline, right? In most of these documents, ask yourself the question that who should I ask for my SOP review? Who should I ask to review my resume? Don't just do it yourself and send it. Usually you need to get it reviewed from people who have been through the process. And in today's talk, we'll cover all of these points. Then exams to give, we'll cover this point in a later section. And finally, how can I improve my profile? See, GPA is fixed. For all of you who are applying for fall 25, you cannot improve your GPA. We all know this. But how else can we present our profile? Through research publications. And we have a separate section for that. So after this webinar is over, please make sure to think about all of these questions. In fact, I encourage you to download this sheet right now and start answering. Which questions am I confident about? What have I started? Do I have mentors whom I can get these documents reviewed from? To get into top universities, you need to make a structured decision planning like this. So this is the first thing which I wanted to convey before even getting started. You need to have this roadmap in mind. And remember, the first thing which I wrote in the documents is university shortlisting. Don't do this in November. Start about this right now, and I'll tell you how to do this. So the best way to shortlist universities is like this. So this is a student who we advised in the long-term mentorship program, and this is the university shortlisting sheet we had prepared for him. Look at these columns: deadline, how many letter of recommendations does the university need, is GRE needed for the university, what is the minimum GPA for the university, uh, do they need TOEFL, do they need IELTS, what's the QS rankings? All of these points are available on the university website. This is the mistake many students make. They keep on asking these questions like, is GRE needed, or how many letters are needed? Everything is mentioned on the university website. You just have to go to the website and start adding these entries. Start adding these entries right now. Even if you have not shortlisted universities, if you don't think, if you think these universities are too hard for you to get into, that's fine. Right now, just start making a big list of 30 universities and start adding these sections, that what's the deadline, what's the LOR, etc. Start this documentation so that you won't feel lost in the process. The most important column which needs to be added is this. This is the easy, medium, and hard classification. So usually we encourage students to apply to 3 easy, 3 medium, and 3 hard universities for risk minimization. You should not apply to all your dream universities. So D is for dream. The difficult thing is, how do you classify these universities as hard, easy, and medium for your profile? And for this, many students again make the mistake that they just look at the QS rankings and they randomly make this classification. Don't make this mistake, because we have seen students with a GPA of 8 or 8.1 get admitted to Stanford because of their research profile. So what students think, oh, my GPA is less than 8.5 and the QS ranking of this university is 13, so it's hard for me, and they put it in the hard category. No, that's not the right way to do this classification. You need to get your university shortlisting list reviewed by someone who has been through the process, reviewed by someone who can look at your profile and say whether this university is easy, medium, or dream for you. So first make this list, then identify mentors who can review this for you so that they can start filling this column for you, and then apply for 3 easy, 3 medium, and 3 dream. Remember that every university application costs around $100. So that is also one more factor to actually consider. So if you apply for 10 universities, the cost will be $1,000. Keep that in mind. So this is regarding university shortlisting. Please start this shortlisting right now. Oh, and one more thing. So for all of you guys who are applying for PhD, 59 students, and there are many who have not filled the form. But this last column, right, this research group, you need to start filling right now. Because for PhD applications, the research group is more important than the ranking of the university. You will spend probably 5 years of your life with the research group. So once I entered MIT, once I entered into the halls of MIT, it did not matter which university I am. What matters is what's my fit with the research group. And this is the mistake I made. I chose a wrong research group. So although I was at MIT, which is rank 1, my experience was miserable in my PhD. This should not happen to you. So always choose universities based on the research groups if you are applying for a PhD, and don't blindly choose them based on their rankings. Okay, so this is the thing regarding university shortlisting. And now, so the main thing is the easy, medium, dream rule, and start making this Excel sheet right now. Then comes the statement of purpose. So let me look at that form again and see how many of you have started making the SOP. So I would assume about half of you have started the SOP and half of you have not started. So an SOP is that document which convinces the admissions committee why they should select you over any other candidate. In my opinion, it's one of the most important documents in the application process. Why? Because it's the only document which allows you to tell your story. So in the SOP, you can have statements like, I worked day and night for this, or I got beautiful results which really satisfied me. You cannot include these subjective statements in your resume. Resume is objective, but statement of purpose is a storytelling exercise. The better story you tell, the better your SOP will be. It's really the most important document, because let's say if your GPA was low in certain semester, where else will you explain the admissions committee why your GPA was low? Maybe you are concentrating on something else, right? Regarding that, maybe you are concentrating on some position of responsibility, or you are working in a startup, so your GPA fell. Where can you explain this? The SOP is the only place where you can explain this. So how to write the perfect SOP, and this is applicable to those who have written it and those who have not started writing it. SOP takes around 2 months to write. Don't just randomly write it in 10 days and submit it. So we have seen around 300, 350 SOPs right now through our long-term mentorship program. And we have seen that the top SOPs who get into top universities have these 4 things in common. The first thing is the thread. The second thing is the hook. The third thing is the supporting cast. And the fourth thing is casting the net. So you all might be thinking, what are the meaning of these terms? Let me explain to them step by step. The first is the thread. The thread is that unifying vision which binds your SOP together. Every single paragraph of your SOP should be directed towards your thread. So if you have not started writing your SOP, or even if you have started writing it, ask yourself, what's my thread? It can be computational physics, it can be fluid mechanics, it can be machine learning. But the problem is that many students, they have 2 to 3 threads. They first write about physics, then they write about computational mechanics, then they write about dynamical systems. That leads to a scattered SOP. You need one unifying vision which binds your entire SOP together. So for example, here's the snippet of my SOP which got me admitted into MIT. Now, whether the admissions committee selects me or not, one thing is pretty clear: when someone reads my SOP, they will understand that this student is interested in fluid mechanics, because that was the vision of my SOP. So if you see the first paragraph, I first write about my IIT rank, all that, and then I write, this very pursuit has inspired me to explore the field of fluid mechanics and to create an impact in this field. Right there, I tell the admissions committee what my vision is. And then at many other paragraphs, I bring the admissions committee back to my vision. So here is a paragraph which actually comes in the second page of my SOP. But see how I've ended this. A master's degree followed by a PhD is an ideal choice for me to leverage the knowledge gained in fluid mechanics. So see, again, I brought my vision. So the reason we call this the thread is because it binds the different paragraphs of your SOP together. It gives one unifying vision to your SOP. So please think about what that is for you. So let's say you might think, I've done work in fluid mechanics, heat transfer, and material sciences. So what can my thread be? Think about a common umbrella. In this case, your thread can be creating an impact in dynamical systems. And then dynamical systems can have all these three components. Be creative in thinking of this common thread which binds your entire SOP together. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is the most important aspect of the SOP, is the hook. The hook is that aspect of your story which is your biggest strength. In our experience, we have seen that some of the strongest hooks are GPA, research publications, a prestigious internship or a fellowship, startup experience, patent. All of these are hooks which will distinguish you from the rest of the applicants. For my case, in my batch, so my batch had 40 students in mechanical engineering, and everyone was applying to MIT. And my rank in my class was 10. So I knew that I needed to justify myself or to distinguish myself from others. So the hook in my SOP was that I had a conference and a journal publication. So see this paragraph. I think this paragraph got me admitted into MIT, because here I have written that a journal paper describing the above work is in preparation, and we plan to submit it to the Journal of Fluid Mechanics. Now, if an admission committee member reads this, it's awesome because this is a very prestigious journal. So this was my hook. If you don't have your hook, or if you're thinking, I don't have publications and my GPA is also not good, the positive aspect about the hook is that if you don't have a hook, it can be cultivated. Please keep this in mind. If you don't have a hook, it can be cultivated. How? It's by these last 3 points which we have mentioned over here. If you don't have a hook, so let's say if you don't have a good GPA, and if if you don't have a research profile, start working on something right now. Start thinking about how I can convert my past project into a literature review paper or a publication or a conference presentation. You can even email us for help regarding this. But remember, don't feel that I don't have a hook, so now I won't get admit. You still have August, September, October, November, December, 5 months to develop your hook, right? So use those 5 months wisely. Start working on a research publication that can always be developed, although GPA cannot be changed after a certain point. The second mistake many students make is that they try to have 4 or 5 papers in random journals or conferences no one has heard about. That is not a good hook. I only had one paper in an impactful journal, and that was enough to get me into MIT. So remember, the quality of your research is more important than quantity. And being first author matters. If you are the second author or third author, it carries much lesser impact than being a first author. So that's regarding the hook. The third element of the SOP is the supporting cast. Now you might be thinking that how can everything in my SOP be related to each other? When we come to the undergrad in first year, we don't come thinking that after 4 years I will apply to grad school and everything I do should be related to each other, right? There are of course some random things which we all have done, but we are proud of these random things. For example, I was applying to fluid mechanics, but I had an internship in installing solar panels, completely random and not related to my vision. So how do you add these supporting elements? There is this trick called the sandwich method. The sandwich method is the method like you start with your vision. So I started with saying that a passion for creating an impact, etc. And you end with your vision or thread. So see, the ending of this paragraph is a master's degree at MIT will help me leverage the knowledge gained in fluid mechanics. See, so starting is the thread, the ending is the thread. In the middle is where you sandwich your random experience. So I had this experience of installing solar panels. So I sandwiched it between the first sentence and the last sentence. And so when someone reads this, they might think, oh, this is random. But then when they read the last sentence, again, they are taken back to my thread. So this is the trick you can do to add these supporting random but yet impactful elements in your SOP. And then the final thing, which is the most important and which is where many students make a mistake, is casting the net. This is the place where you have to make your pitch to the admissions committee, right? So these are the last two paragraphs of my SOP. In the second last paragraph, you have to write about the research groups you're interested in. So how to write this second last paragraph? This is where this university sheet last column comes into the picture. If you have started working on the university sheet right from now, when you come to SOP writing and when you come to writing the second last paragraph, you won't write this in a weak manner because you would have already searched about the groups. So here it's important that you write about the groups you're interested in and write it in detail. If you just write the name randomly, admissions committee can make it out. You have to write why this group is aligned with your interests. And last paragraph, everyone, is the most important. Here is where you have to make your pitch. Look at my pitch. So I have written that I feel that with the experience of doing both experimental and theoretical research and the knowledge gained from relevant courses, I would be able to contribute positively to the research output of MIT. This was my pitch. Now, the mistake many students make is that they write about what the university can bring to their life. So they say that MIT or Stanford can enrich my experience. They have a great peer group, but they don't write what they can bring to the table. Many students don't write what they can contribute to the university. What can you do for the university? It's a two-way street, right? So see, here I have written that I would be able to contribute positively to the research output of MIT. So I have written that I will also contribute to MIT. Of course, MIT will contribute to my life, but the mistake many students make is they don't write their contribution, right? And that makes you appear like an underconfident individual who is applying. Remember, SOP is a storytelling exercise. You have to tell the best possible story. And this is the last paragraph of your SOP. You have to make sure you make your pitch in the strongest possible manner. So, in summary, there are four main elements which make a very strong SOP. The first is the thread, which binds your SOP together. Second is the hook, which is the strongest part of your SOP, which will distinguish you from the rest. It can be GPA, research publications, internships, startup experience, or patent. If you don't have a hook, cultivate it. Email us for assistance. Do whatever you want. Take the help of mentors, seniors to convert your projects into publications. But work hard in the next 4 to 5 months to develop your hook. Then supporting cast. If you have random elements which are impactful, use the sandwich technique to connect them to your thread. And then final thing, make the pitch. Remember, it's a two-way street. Always write about what you will also bring to the table. Then I believe I have some do's and don'ts here. Don't use cheesy stuff. Don't write too many sentences like Elon Musk said this or Albert Einstein said this, so I'm passionate about this. It does not work. Secondly, don't do SOP in 2 weeks. It takes 2 months. I remember I did 10 iterations of my SOP and I got it reviewed from some very good people who had been through the process. Actually, what you should do is look at some contacts who have got into the top universities and get your SOP reviewed from them, because they will look at it from the angle of top universities and they will give you good feedback. So make sure that you get feedback from these people who have been through the process. And I think this is the final slide before we come to Dr. Rajat and his part about LOR, resume, GRE, and research. So before I end my part, I just want to give a quick recap. So after this webinar, start adding some comments in this Excel sheet. Then you will yourself know whether you are clear about these decisions. Then start making documents right from now. This is the perfect time. Start making university shortlisting, SOP, resume, letter of recommendation. If you don't have anyone who can review your SOP for you, email us. We'll help you in this process for all of these parts. If you don't have a hook in your SOP, develop this hook. Start working on your research profile. Regarding exams to give, Rajat will cover this part. But remember 3 things: GRE, TOEFL, IELTS. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen now. Okay, so in this section, we will continue with the rest of the documents which you need for the application process. And Raj has covered the SOP document very nicely. And I'm going to start with the two other documents which you need when you're applying, which are the letters of recommendation and the resume. So I've seen that a lot of candidates actually underestimate the importance of the letters of recommendation, and they keep it till the very last minute, thinking that it's not very important who writes the letter. Well, letter of recommendation are also one of the most crucial documents in your application process, and generally there are three factors which are important whenever you're writing a letter. The first is the credibility of the person who is writing the letter of recommendation for you. So by credibility, I mean that let's say a letter from the head of your department, or from a professor who has tenure, it counts a lot more compared to a letter from a PhD or a postdoc student. Then the second is the diversity of your LORs. So all of us, when we applied, we had two letters of recommendation from academia and one from industry. So there was a mix of academia and industry. Another area from where the diversity can come in is a mixture of domestic professors giving you the LOR and international professors giving you the LOR. It makes you seem like a candidate who is ready to work in an international collaborative environment. And finally, I will come to the third point, which is very important, and that's the strength of your letter of recommendation. These days, we are seeing that a lot of students, when they are approaching their professors for writing the letter of recommendations, their professors are telling them that, why don't you write the first draft and then I will edit and then I will send it across. Now, majority of the time, what happens is that whatever first draft you write, your professor is going to end up sending that same draft to the universities. So that brings a lot of control in your hands and in the writing process. And with that control, you also have a lot of responsibility, right? So I've seen that a lot of students, when they get this control, they write a lot of stuff where they say that this particular student had a desire to do robotics from a very young age, and they write very personal experiences. Now, as a member of an admission committee, when I'm reading these LORs, I immediately understand that it's not a very authentic LOR written by a professor, because it's very rare that a professor knows your personal background from your childhood. Also, many students are using ChatGPT these days for writing letter of recommendation, which is not a very good idea at all, because these letters are handcrafted and they can contain errors. It's completely fine. After all, it's written by a human being. So you don't need to make it sound perfect. You just have to make it sound in a way which does not look generic. So I've given some examples here where we have converted sentences which look generic sounding to sentences which look exceptional, but also taking into account the fact that it should not look very monotonic. And this is a common tendency with a lot of students. Whenever you're writing or speaking about yourself, whether it's the SOP or letter of recommendation, you try to be a bit more conservative. So one thing we really want to explain you in this webinar is that you can actually sell yourself a little bit. You can boast about it a little bit. And that's completely fine. I know the general tendency is to just be to the point and think about what if the admission committee finds out that this is not completely true. Well, we are not lying about anything. The only difference is that we are boasting about the point a little bit more and making the LOR sound a bit more exceptional. Now, if you think about it, exceptional LORs are always going to come from people under whom you have worked for an extended amount of time, whether it is in the academia, whether it is in the industry. If you have only worked for 2 months with someone, they are going to end up writing something which is a bit generic. But association of more than 6 months, we have seen typically leads for a strong endorsement. So if you have time, even if you are applying for Fall-25, we would highly suggest to have one LOR among the three set of letters, which is very, very strong. And that can only come from developing an association with a person for more than 6 to 7 months. So if you have not yet, then now is the time to start developing that association. Remember, you have to plan for all these things very smartly. Now, getting an LOR
is something which is easy once the person you have in mind is going to write a strong LOR. After that, it's a straightforward process. Again, your LOR is very closely linked with your SOP, because let's say you write a hook in your SOP, and if that paper is not submitted or the paper is in preparation, then what's the proof to the admission committee that you have actually written the paper? Now, if a professor gives you an endorsement, so if what you saw in Dr. Raj's SOP, he had simply mentioned in that the paper is in the preparatory stage. But what happened is that the professor of Dr. Raj actually endorsed regarding this in the LOR, where he said that Dr. Raj has actually worked on this project and we are planning to submit it to this journal soon. That brings a good coherency between the two documents. So I want to show you an LOR which I personally like very much. This is an LOR which is written for Dr. Sridhar, who is present in the call today. And I like this LOR because it has a lot of nice sections. Firstly, you can see this LOR is up to 2 pages long, which is itself very rare. Then there is an endorsement, firstly, for the research skill set of this student, where the professor goes ahead and talks about how this student has excelled in the main research problem. And of course, this can be a little bit technical, which is perfectly fine. But the professor then goes ahead and also cites this student for his leadership skills. So here you can see in this paragraph, he mentions that he received the award for the most creative presenter. So along with the research skill set, there is an endorsement for presentation skill set. Then communication skill set is mentioned in the last paragraph. And all of these paragraphs are a bit technical, but that's fine. As a reviewer, when I'm reading this LOR, I'm extremely impressed. So try to keep this as the gold standard of the LOR. You need to have one LOR which looks like this out of all the LORs which you are receiving. So it doesn't matter what is the reputation of your college, what is the GPA. If you get an LOR which is truly outstanding, it will make your candidature way ahead compared to the rest of the people or the students who are applying along with you. So keep this point in mind. Letters of recommendation are very important, and you need to plan for these 3 people in advance. Whether you are working in an academia or industry, the same rule applies to both these types. Now we'll go to the third document after SOP and LOR. You have your resume. Resume is a very different ball game altogether, because unlike SOP, which your admission committee is going to spend a lot of time reading, resume typically gets a 30 to 60-second glance from a person in the admission committee, and they form an immediate opinion, because we are going through a lot of resume drafts, and you don't have time to look at all the resumes in detail. So the first page of the resume should be extremely impactful. And that's the reason I always recommend to have the hook, which you have mentioned in the SOP, directly in the first page. Now, here we are seeing 2 sample SOPs of Dr. Sridhar, where the first thing that distinguishes the student is that they have the publication section right on the first page, which itself is very rare. Not many students have this. Then they have a patent section also. Remember, Dr. Raj also had the publication section directly in the first page. What this does is that it places the hook directly at the start of your resume, and it builds a lot of impact. Because when I see this immediately, I'm very impressed. I'm thinking, okay, this student is doing something which I don't see in a lot of other resumes. Even if it says under preparation submitted, it still means a lot that an undergraduate student or a student working in industry is writing research paper. So that itself speaks for a lot. I'm going to show you a sample of my own resume to help you understand. Now, this is a resume I wrote for a PhD application. For PhD applications, resumes are typically a bit more longer. So you can see my resume here is 3 pages long. For master's applications, they can be a bit short. And for PhD applications, we recommend the focus to be very heavy on the research projects. So the flow here is like this. I start with the publications and the conference presentations. Again, they are the hook in my SOP. You can see here that it says in preparation and it's submitted. So I had 0 publications by the time I was applying, but I had written this, and at the bottom you can see there is a portfolio website where I have uploaded a draft of this paper after getting permission from my professor. Then we have the conference presentations patent section. Followed by that, I have one full page dedicated to research projects. Here I have done a very smart trick that the first two projects were actually performed under the supervision of the same guide, but I have divided them into two projects just to increase the depth of the list of my research projects, so that if an admission committee wants to go through this, they can see that, okay, this student has done a lot of research. And this page immediately looks very impressive. I also want you to show that I want to show you that in my resume there is a mix of, you can see, fluid mechanics and automotive engineering. So you might think that it's not very coherent, but I have smartly written my SOP in such a way that my main thread is broad enough that includes fluid mechanics as well as automotive engineering. And then after that, I have a third page which is dedicated to professional experience, relevant coursework, and extracurricular activities. Many students place a lot of emphasis on these extracurricular activities, which are really not very important, because it's very hard for an admissions committee to compare between, let's say, if a student is good in music versus basketball, because it's a very subjective comparison. But comparison between the number of publications and conferences offers a very objective way of comparison. That's why I always recommend to place a lot of emphasis on the first page of your resume and make it look extremely compelling directly in the first page itself. Okay, so these are some of the key elements, but before you even read this, the very first thing to take care of in the resume is the formatting. You saw that in my resume, it was looking in a very different font, right? Well, that's because it was written in a LaTeX format. We used a software called Overleaf to prepare these resumes, and Overleaf makes your documents look very professional looking, and no grammatical mistakes. These are the two thumb rules, or the two guiding posts which you should follow before you even start with writing the contents of your resume. So make sure that you have these two key points covered. And as I said, for a PhD application, you have to place a lot of emphasis on the research projects, publications, conference presentations, etc. And we have seen this a lot with the students we have guided, students who, let's say, do not have a good CGPA, who are not from a very reputed college. Having these publications and conference presentation sections in your resume is going to make your resume stand out from the rest of the applicants. And okay, so some of the do's and don'ts is that for a master's, don't write a resume which is more than 2 pages long, and there is really no need to write down entries such as your marital status, gender, etc. So keep it very professional and make it look very impressive. One last thing I want to say is that before I move to the next section, is that all these three documents should tell the same story. Whatever hook you're writing in the SOP, the same hook should appear in the first page of your resume, and the same hook should be endorsed by a professor in your letter of recommendation. Try to find a person whom you associate with for more than 6-7 months who can give you a very strong LOR. Make sure the credibility of the LORs is good and the diversity is also there. You can mix and match between academia, industry, domestic, international, etc. Make sure that the first page of your resume is extremely impressive, and the formatting of your resume is good. It looks very professional and there are 0 grammatical errors. So these are the 3 documents which are the building blocks of your entire application process, and they should really tell the same story. Okay, so now we move to the English sections. So many of you might be aware of this, that GRE is not really required now in a majority of universities. They have mentioned that GRE is not mandatory. Still, many people like to give it, thinking that it's going to be an advantage. What we think is that if it's mentioned that GRE is not going to be looked at, then there is no real need in spending time to prepare for GRE. the admissions committee are very fair in their process, and they are not going to give an advantage to a student who has got good marks in GRE as opposed to student who has not given GRE at all. They are going to compare the other factors of your profile. So if you are applying to universities where GRE is not mandatory, then there is really no need of spending time to prepare for the GRE examination. Of course, you have to prepare for TOEFL or IELTS, especially if the native language in your country is not English. If you're from India, then definitely you will have to give one of these two examinations. And all of us, we had given TOEFL. You need to get a score of above 90. It's not a very hard limit. We have got scores of above 105, which is typically a very good score. And it takes around 2 months for or 1.5 to 2 months for TOEFL preparation. So even if you start by August end or September, it's completely fine. So that you, in case you do very bad by mistake, then you have a chance for a second attempt as well. You need to always keep that buffer in case something goes wrong. Okay, so now I'm going to cover the last section in my presentation, which is the research profile. A lot of you have asked in the chat that how can I start developing my research profile as a beginner? And this section is something where we at Videsh actually focus very heavily on, because we have seen a lot of applications being turned around just on the merit of the research profile. Now, what do we mean by having a strong research profile? Well, basically, it means any of these four things. Either you should have an international research internships, you should have publications, you should have conferences, or you should have patents. Make sure you have a very laser focused approach in your undergrad or in the industry. Do not spend time in, let's say, volunteering for events, doing being a coordinator, managing festivals. If you want a good admit in one of the top universities, you have to be laser focused in developing a very strong research profile, which can be any of these four things which I have mentioned. The main goal, what we have is to take your resume from the one which looks on the right to the resume which looks on the left, which has publications and conferences section. Instead of having a list of projects, it's way better to have fewer projects, but divided nicely into publications and conferences sections. So you don't have to necessarily publish. It can be in preparation or submitted stage. Now let's look at in detail how you can develop your research profile. Let's say you're applying by fall 25. So you have what, August to September, August to December, you have around 5 months to prepare a research paper. We don't want the paper to be accepted. We just want to write a research paper and submit it to a journal by December. There are really three options with you. You can either go with journal paper with new results, you can go with literature review papers, or you can go with preprints. So let me cover these three options in detail. The first option that we are going to cover is the option of literature review paper. Literature review offers a very straightforward process of publishing your first research paper and developing your profile. It's because you don't need to do any novel stuff when you are writing a literature review paper. We have created a very nice summary here, which you can see. The step number 2, which is reviewing your first 25 papers to identify the story. That is the most important process while you are writing your literature review paper. The more papers you read, the better story you're going to be able to form, and the better paper you will be able to write. The duration that it takes to write a review paper from scratch, from start to finish, it's about 3 to 4 months if you follow all the guidelines properly. And review papers are often considered to be very prestigious. The main reason is that if a new researcher is entering the field, they would not like to read all these 25 research papers separately, right? Their time will be saved if they read a single review paper in which there is a very nice summary, and of these papers, it is divided into different sections so that you have a clear understanding of where the field is currently and where the field is heading. So so review papers give a very nice understanding of the entire literature to the community, and that's why they are considered to be prestigious as well. This is the first avenue for beginners who are getting started with the development of their research profile. And there is a very nice series of steps using which you can write your first review paper. The second option is preprints. We recommend preprints for students who have developed some basic projects and they directly want to get a publication out of it. All of us have done projects in colleges, in industries, etc. If you have a project which you think, okay, maybe it's not novel enough, it's completely fine even if it's not novel. All you have to do is that just prepare a nice story for that project, write the project down in a format of a research paper, and then just submit it to preprints like Archive, BioArchive, or Tech Archive. It makes a lot of impact even if it gets submitted to Archive, because at least you can add one publication instead of having a lot of projects in your resume. So having preprints is also considered to be prestigious, and it makes a lot of impact if you have these sections in your resume. And you can convert your course projects into preprints before December. This is definitely doable. There is another approach here, which is a journal paper with new results. That typically takes a longer time and a longer duration. So if you have more timeline, if you want to apply maybe next to next year, then this is a good way to start, because you can approach a professor, you can brainstorm about a new research project, and then you can directly get started to work on that particular research project with the professor, with an aim to have a publishable result in a journal after maybe 1 year or 1.5 years down the line. So I just want to motivate you by telling you a bit about my journey. So this in the year of 2015, I think this was in the third year of my college. I had zero research experience before that. And I just reached out to a postdoc who was working in a lab of a professor I was interested in. I just messaged saying that I want to do a project, and then he has messaged that please come to meet me in the lab and we can discuss about a project. This is how I started my research journey, and I continued on this for a period of 1 year. And here you can see that the professor has actually congratulated me. I think Rajat has learned a lot, not only how to do research, but how to handle reviewers' comments. This is because our paper got rejected the first time that we had submitted, and second time it got accepted at a different journal. And then Jason, this PhD student, also congratulates me. He says that it was a pleasure to work with you and Rajat on this paper, etc. Now, I accept that this paper was not very novel. It was a bit derivative in nature. But the moment I saw this publication in this chemical engineering science journal, it actually filled me with pride, because it was my first research paper. I was not even thinking of applications at that point. I was just so happy to get my first research paper published. So this is the arc that I followed. If you are new to research, it is not a very difficult process. You just have to work very hard and be laser focused in your research project. Even if you have other commitments, make sure you spend some time of your day doing research, and it will have a lot of long-term benefits, not just in terms of the preparation or the strength of your application. So now I'll stop sharing my screen, and Dr. Sridhar will actually cover the next part.
Thanks, Rajat. Can you please tell me if my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So I'll be talking a little bit about how exactly you can use the remaining months, right? So we are in August. So you have August, September, October, and November. It's like 4 months. Most of the universities, especially in the US, they have deadline by the end of November. And many students were asking in the chat if applying in the early application deadline, which falls in October or something for many universities, whether it's beneficial or not. We have also heard that it's beneficial, but we don't have a single data point to prove that. Most of the students that we knew last year, they applied in the regular application deadline, which was end of November or beginning of December for many universities, and it worked out really fine. So the actual answer is we really don't know. We don't see based on data that there is any benefit in applying in the early application deadline. Normal application deadline is also working. But that being said, you should focus on two things, right? So if you have papers or if you have stuff that are in a good state, which can be written up into a preprint or into a paper, this is a good time to do that. So that is what we have been telling you about research profile. But other than that, you have to have a great story in your application, which is coherent. And it's also a good time. This is August, so it's a good time to start communicating with your potential recommenders. The idea that, so you meet with them and you just tell them, hi professor, I'm applying for PhD or masters this fall, which is this November. Would you be kind enough to recommend me? And then once they confirm that, just ask them if they will be if they will benefit if we can give them a draft of a letter of recommendation. And this has to be very careful depending on the professor's personality. If they are very if they get offended very easily, maybe it's not a good idea to ask them this, because they might say, hey, don't tell me what to write, I know what to write in the LOR. But play it very nicely. If you have papers, this is something that we did last year with many students, and we are also doing it with currently this year with many students, basically working on two types of papers: research papers and review papers. Research papers, we work on students if they have already done some work which is kind of there, but not in the format of a paper, but more like a elaborate report. And we can work to figure out what is the best way to put it as a good story for a scientific research article. The other kind of papers, as Rajat mentioned, are review papers. Please, guys, please pay some good amount of emphasis on portfolio website. This is not necessary for any application. It's not a mandatory thing that you have to do, but having a beautiful portfolio website is a great way to show a lot of things that you have done. Many people were asking in the chat, they have papers and projects that are unrelated to their main area of interest to which they want to apply. So some projects, or let's say you don't have the space to mention so many projects or so many things which you have done in your resume or in your SOP, portfolio website is that place. This is the only place where you can show visual things from your work. If you have a simulation, you may have a GIF showing temperature and stress distribution on a 2D structure, or you may have another GIF showing some computations, like some numerical simulation. Many things you can show visually. You may have a video recording of you presenting or demonstrating your project in your classroom or in a conference. You may have other stuff from your hobby projects. All these things you can put in your portfolio website in many different ways. And this example screenshot that I'm showing is from Raj's portfolio website. And you can see that immediately from this landing page, you can see who is he, what is he currently doing, and what are his interests, everything. And there are so many sections possible. Obviously, we understand that for most of you, you may not have publications yet. You may not have delivered a conference talk. Don't worry, it's fine. You talk about your projects. You create, instead of a publication section, create a project section. And then you will have figures or schematics or visual elements from your projects, which you can show as thumbnails of your project. Then put a link to that thumbnail and show that this is the details of the project. If there is a report, attach the report in the website. And this website can be a live website. So what I mean by that is, so Raj and Rajat, both of them had papers that were under preparation during the grad school application. And the best way to put that in a way in which the admissions committee can see is create a publication section, put that paper, put the draft of the paper in your portfolio website, and then hyperlink that in your resume. So this way, even if you submit your application in end of November, the actual time by when admissions committee will look at it will be sometime in January, because December is the month when semester exams are going on. Then university will be closing for Christmas and New Year. January is a lazy month. People are still coming back to the university. So maybe it will be end of January or something. So those 2 months you can really leverage. If your paper gets submitted or accepted or something like that in those 2 months, it's a good thing, and you can make it reflect in your website. Of course, you can also email the admissions committee saying, hey, I have a small or major change in my profile. Can I make that change in my resume now? They may, 50% chance that they may allow, they may not allow also. But in either case, website is that place where you can do all these things. Your LinkedIn profile is not your portfolio website. In your LinkedIn, you can only put so many things, right? Your GitHub repository, that profile, that's also not your portfolio of work. Your portfolio is your portfolio website, and using Google Sites, you can create this in one day. The website that Raj has built, it's using GitHub Pages. Both of these are amazing tools. Now, when we mention story, the only thing that we mean is LOR, SOP, and resume. These three things should say the same thing about you. People should not get an impression that this candidate is interested in this, and this from these three documents. So in a way, these three documents should be very coherent. We totally understand that in some cases, you won't have the control over your LOR, especially if you are not writing the first draft of the LOR on behalf of the professor. But don't worry, in that case, you try to communicate your requirement with the professor in a very, in a non-offensive way, and you do your best job in the SOP and the resume. So finally the university shortlisting. So these are some of the things that we usually lay an outline for the students, and also how to plan a very good timeline as part of our long-term mentorship. So the basic idea that what we are trying to tell you, if you have one takeaway from today's webinar, that should be this: never undersell your profile, only upsell. So what we mean by upsell is the following. We have seen students mentioning their publications in the second page of their resume. In fact, good publications. And that's it's like a big mistake. See, if you are applying for master's or PhD, the single most valuable thing that you can show to an admissions committee is your conference presentations, your publications, or if you have any patents, those. Everything else can wait. If you have a research experience, it can come next. If you have let's say international research internship, that also can come next. And why is that? It's because imagine you are applying to these universities abroad, and let's take an example. Let's say you are applying to University of Michigan. University of Michigan's department, they are getting applicants from India, China, US, South Korea, Africa, all places, right? And all these students are toppers of their respective departments or respective universities. And all of these students will very likely have multiple international research internships. Probably they will definitely have research experience. They will definitely have projects, many projects. So there is no way you can stand out just with those things that other people already have. The only way in which you can truly stand out is through tangible outcome that happened as a result of your work, which are publications and conferences, patents, etc. Because those are actual outcomes. So you show that first. So that is what we mean by upselling the profile, and we usually use this banana seller analogy to kind of put this point across very sharp into your mind. Imagine your profile like a banana. In reality, your profile will have so many issues, like there will be loopholes. Your projects may not be aligning. Your paper might have gotten rejected. So if these are the case, don't call it out. You don't have to say that. Will you sell a banana if you are a banana seller saying, hey, I have a banana, it's not the best one, but it's still good. Do you want to take it? Nobody is going to take it. So you should sell yourself as if you are the best candidate. And departments all across the world are also trying to do the same thing. You go to any department website, will you ever see that, hey, we have 57 faculty, 54 of them are really good, 3 of them are very toxic? You will not see that. But that's the reality. In many universities, including MIT, there are very toxic professors with whom you cannot work or you should not work. But they will not say that. You will not get that information from anywhere. They are trying to show the best version of their work or their department to you, so that they can attract the best possible talent towards them. And what you should be doing is you show the best possible version of yourself to the universities, so that you can attract the best universities towards you. So it's a fair game, and you should play that. Now, I'll take a few moments before entering to the Q&A. So in the Q&A, we'll be going through your questions that you have put in the chat. So please continue to put your questions. We'll be covering them as much as possible before the end of the webinar. So this long-term mentorship 2024, it's already been going on. Many students have already graduated from the research paper writing part of it. So we have split into two: research paper writing part and application part. So this research paper writing part, if you are applying for fall 2025, we are closing this really soon. Really soon meaning we don't plan to take anyone beyond 15th of August. So I'll not spend too much time here. But if anyone is interested for fall 2026 or even research internships for 2026 summer, feel free to let us know if you are interested in phase 1. We'll be working on a review paper, or if you have already worked on a decent project on a research, like a research project, which has resulted in a report or something of that nature, we can figure out what's the best way to do additional work and convert that into a good paper that we can submit to good journals. The typical duration of this will be 3 months. Phase 2 is where we'll be purely focusing on all the things related to application. When we say all the things, we don't necessarily mean every single thing. We specifically mean 5 things, not 6. University shortlisting, statement of purpose, 3 LORs, resume and website. GRE, TOEFL, IELTS, we don't mentor students because honestly it's very boring, and that's not what we are good at, but we'll be sharing some good material that you can benefit from. GRE, as Rajat already mentioned, it's not a mandatory thing anymore. When 9 out of 10 universities will not need that, but TOEFL and IELTS, of course, you will need to write them and try to get as good of a score as you can. We do have a very nice profile assessment form. This is a list of questions which we have curated. When I say list, it's actually very, very long. It's probably the biggest Google form you will ever come across. But basically, this is something that we use routinely to figure out what the student has done in their past maybe 5, 6, 7 years of work, so that we can also figure out what's the best story to tell in case they miss something in their SOP or resume. It's a manual form. It's not like a AI tool for helping you. It's a manual tool for helping us. The reason why we are continuing LTM 2024, apart from the reasons of good admits last year, is that the process was really good. The admits were good, but we knew we will continue LTM 2024 even before the admits started coming, because last year we got an opportunity to work with students from very diverse backgrounds. So for very selfish reasons, we found it very satisfying, because these students came from CS. So 60% of them were probably from CS. Many of them were from data science, statistics, economics, finance, mechanical, civil engineering, many other engineering areas. Then also not many non-engineering areas. So while working on research aspect of things with them, we also got to learn a lot of technical and non-technical aspects about those areas of research. So we found it very satisfying to do that activity. So it was for very purely selfish reasons, we'll continue to do that. But beyond that, the tangible outcome the students also received were good. Like they ended up getting remote research internships at MIT Media Lab, NTU, and various other places. And all of this happened obviously because of the hard work of the students. So all credits to them. But we also enjoyed the process a lot. And these are some of the sample papers that some of our students wrote last year. We were very proud of this work because initially when we started this research paper writing process with the students, we were not sure what to really expect, because we had no idea how motivated the students are. You always have an idea about your own capabilities, but you don't know when it comes to some other person, and you don't know how to motivate them if they are not motivated. So we had a lot of doubts about the ability to our own ability to make students work on research papers, but it was very, very successful, and many of these students still continue to maintain very good relationships with us, and some of them are in fact collaborating with us on some large scale project. We have some mega projects going on in our startup as part of the product development cycle only. So some of these students are helping us build some features for the product, as well as to work on some large scale research projects. And these papers are just a few samples from those. Some of them were very, very high quality. This year, in fact, this was 2 weeks ago, we were discussing about one particular paper that we worked with a student, and it's of very high quality, and we were thinking of submitting it to Nature. It like 95% chance it will not get accepted, because the acceptance rate of these top journals are very, very low. But the problem that we were encountering was something different, which we never encountered during our PhD. So the Nature has something called APC, Article Processing Charge, and it's for open access. It's like $10,000 or $12,000, which is like in Indian rupees, it's like 10 lakh rupees or something. You can buy like a decent car with that. So we were more worried about, okay, we submit here, even if it gets accepted, we can't pay this kind of an amount. So what's the solution here? So it was a good problem to think about, at least from the point of view that, okay, at least now we are thinking about Nature and top tier conferences and journals, and that's a good direction to go. And in terms of admits, it was very, very good. So Johns Hopkins was one university that really blew my mind, in the sense that it's very difficult to get into Johns Hopkins for some weird reasons, especially for Indian students. I have seen this. Very, very few Indian students get into Johns Hopkins. So last year, however, 5 or 6 students got into Johns Hopkins who worked with us. And to CMU, around 6 students got. UIUC, Cornell, USC, and many other universities. So on an average, I think each student got maybe 3 to 4 admits on an average, and there were students who got even 9, 10 admits. So it was a very satisfying thing to hear back from all of these people in the months of February through April. And some of them are flying like tomorrow, and this is the time when universities are calling students to, this classes are starting end of August or beginning of September. So this is the time when students are flying to the US or to the other country. So visa is done. So it's like that time of the year when we are reaping the fruits of last year's work. But overall, it has been very good. We really enjoyed the process. And I'll not go through all of this because I would rather spend some time in the Q&A. But before going to the Q&A, I just want to stop sharing my screen so that Raj can share one more thing. But in a nutshell, what we are trying to show you through the whole process of phase 1 and phase 2 is, if you don't know what is a good problem statement to work on, if you want to kind of build or boost your research profile, that is something that we are really, really good at. In fact, incredibly good at. So we can help you with that. If you don't know how to pitch your story in a good way, which is basically an art of communication, we are also very, very good at that. I say it without shame. I think I'm very good at storytelling. So are Raj and Rajat. They are probably the best people I have ever seen. So that is something we can definitely add a lot of value to your life. But I'll stop sharing my screen here, and Raj, you can talk a little bit about machine learning part of things. And this is something that Rajat showed already. So students, please, don't have bunch of projects like this in your resume. This adds no value for fair reasons. Like imagine you are in the admissions committee. Imagine I'm in the admissions committee. I'm getting bunch of resumes. There are 4 projects this student has 6 projects, the other student has 7 projects. And how do I know what is the value of these projects? What is the basis for comparison? I have no idea. So I have no way. And then suddenly there is another student who has 1 paper but no other BS projects, right? Obviously that student's profile is going to stand out in my mind. So try to be in that bucket, and that's what we are trying to achieve also. So Raj, you can start sharing your screen.
Okay. All right. So one thing which we did at the beginning of this year was that, so last year we noticed that, and I can see from a lot of comments in the chat also, that there are a number of students who want to apply, especially for machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data science jobs, not just jobs, but really grad school applications as well. Now, the problem with this field is that it's becoming highly competitive. Everyone is applying for computer science masters and PhD. So the main question for these students is, how can we help them distinguish themselves from their peers? And how can these students really make their profile impactful? So my PhD was in the field of scientific machine learning, and I published 5 to 6 papers in this field. The advantage of this field is that this field mixes your domain knowledge with machine learning. So if you are looking to transition to ML while applying, or if you want an impactful project, scientific ML is the best place, because natural language processing, computer vision, data science, these fields are a bit saturated. If you want a publication, here is a boot camp you can leverage to get that publication on your profile, which will distinguish you from all the other students who are basically applying. So I'm sharing the link on the chat right now. Please go to this link right now so that you can follow with me as I'm going through this page. I hope everyone is on this link with me right now. So please look at the bootcamp objectives first. The main objective of this bootcamp is to help you transition to ML, of course, from any field. I transitioned from mechanical engineering and I had no background in ML before. So not only CS students, everyone can do this transition, implement domain specific hands-on projects, which also you can add to your resume. So remember the hook which we talked about in the SOP. This can be the hook of your profile. And the most important thing is this third point, which is basically we can convert the projects which we do in this bootcamp into research publications. And in fact, some of these publications are already being sent to conferences like NeurIPS and ICML, which I'll show you in a minute. So here is the bootcamp curriculum. We have designed this ourselves based on our PhD in scientific ML. So we took around 8 months to develop this curriculum. And here are some cool projects which you will be doing. So here is a project which integrates physics with springs. So physics with mechanical engineering. Then there is a project which, physics with machine learning. Then there is a project which integrates astronomy and physics, black hole dynamics with machine learning. These projects you won't find anywhere else. GitHub projects, Kaggle projects, they are very common. They are toy projects. Everyone has them on their resume. That won't distinguish you from the other applicants. But if you do these projects, you will truly have a distinguishing factor. And that can help you a lot in especially applying for machine learning related grad school admissions. Now, we understand that people in this call are from diverse fields, right? Some of you just want to maybe take this course and add it to your profile. But for those of you who are interested in doing research, check out this bootcamp researcher plan. As you can see, there are around 40 students enrolled in this plan. And I just want to quickly show you the papers we are working on with them. So here are the papers which you are doing with all these projects, with all these people. So with a student called Samir, for example, we are doing a project which integrates machine learning with climate sciences. And as you can see, Samir is working on this paper as we speak right now. So this paper we are planning to submit to NeurIPS, which is the best ML conference in the world. And we achieved this through the bootcamp. So we are very proud of this, but not just climate. There are so many other fields. This paper is in the field of astronomy. This is in battery degradation. There are papers in economics, physics. So here you can see, here are the LTM papers which we are working on. Here are the SciML papers which you are working on. And here are again the scientific ML research projects. So based on if you're an industry professional, go for the industry professional plan. If you are just a student who wants to take the course, go for the student plan. If you want to publish a paper for sure before the admissions deadline, so that you can add it to the resume, go for the researcher plan. So please check out this website in a lot of detail and take an informed decision about what do you want to do. Let me see if I have missed something in the slide. Yeah, so this is the SciML bootcamp, and the main goal is transition to ML, impactful projects, publish ML research, and it is applicable to all engineering fields. So if I look at this form right now, let me just take a quick look at this form. And I can see the people are from computer science, biotechnology, mechanical, chemical, chemistry, mechanical engineering, so many fields, right? As we can see over here. For all of these projects, for all of these fields, we can do essentially a scientific machine learning project. And that can be added to your profile. So it's not related to any field. Whichever field you are in, you can basically apply for this bootcamp. We have 2 batches happening every month. Next batch is starting on August 7th, I think. So if you want to join for that batch, you can email at hello@flywithesh.com. Here are some of the papers which we have published with candidates and the vision of the papers which we'll have for you also at the end of this bootcamp. I already shared these different plans with you guys. And again, these testimonials, I won't go into the detail, but more than 100 students are a part of this bootcamp since we launched it this year. I already mentioned to you the end goal of this bootcamp, so I won't be going through these 4 points. So lastly, I will ask Sridhar to share about his experiences regarding his life at MIT.
Yeah, you can keep the slides, Raj. So since all of you are here, either applying for masters or PhD or for maybe MBA or similar programs, it's a good decision if you can make it happen, and if you can make it happen in a financially not so difficult way, right? Many students who are applying for masters, they either do a combination of, some of them take partly loan, partly savings, and then some of them also get TA-ship in 1 or 2 semesters out of the 4 semesters if it's for MS. So and at the end of it, if you are in a well-connected university, irrespective of the university's rank or anything, you will end up getting in a good company, in a good job. There are many other considerations that students usually have about visa, what happens if you won't get visa. In US, you can still work for 3 years under something called as OPT, and only after that the visa issue, if at all it's happening, it will happen. So in those 3 years, we had friends who actually did not get their visa after 3 years, but they still ended up saving good amount of money in that period of 3 years. So, and it very easily covered more than all of their expenses they incurred. But anyways, I think overall this is a very good experience, very good decision to go to these top universities for MS or PhD application or PhD programs. It will change you in many ways that you cannot really foresee right now. I personally experienced a lot of these changes mainly because of not because of the infrastructure or kind of the facilities that there are there, but more because of the brilliance and the passion of the people who were attending these universities. So I could rarely come across anyone who was not passionate in these like especially at MIT. That was not the case at during my undergrad, like at IIT Madras. I maybe 10%, 15% of the students were incredibly passionate about something. Most of the others had some other kind of interest which was not really aligning with how I wanted to think of passion. But at MIT I came across most people who were passionate about something or the other, and that itself, if you spend 2 years or 5 years in such an ambience, it really transforms you as an individual. And that's something that is you should definitely try to experience. Can we go to the next slide, Raj? So we'll enter the Q&A now. Maybe the next slide. Yeah, so this is our email, hello@flyvidage.com. Raj, Rajat, and I, all of us have access to this email. So if you are interested in SciML or in LTM, just send us an email with your details. Don't send us like a flat email saying, hi, I'm interested, because we get dozens of emails like that. So we won't be able to respond to you unless unless we know that you are serious about applications or about machine learning, and we'll get to know that only if you put your details in the email. So please mention your details. Also attach the latest version of your resume, and we'll be definitely getting back to you, most likely in one day. And I think that pretty much covers all the slides, but we can go through some questions now in the chat, so you guys can continue to put your questions in the chat.
Yeah. Maybe I can take the first. So there are a lot of queries about emailing professors, and people seem to be worried about what to write in these emails, what to say in these interviews after. So none of us actually emailed professors before we submitted our applications, and don't spend like a lot of energy in thinking about emailing professors right now. Right now, your first priority should be to just prepare your applications and submit. And in our case, we received emails from the professors, and then we selected our professors. I know that in some cases, you have to send out emails to secure RAs and TAs. Generally, that is more common for masters. For PhD, usually allotment is pretty much secure. But for masters, you are not guaranteed an RA-ship or a TA-ship. In that case, you have to send out emails. But even in that case, the process happens after you receive the admit. There are some students who apply or who submit emails before the application deadline, that is December, with the hope of increasing their chances. In some odd cases, that does happen, but in our experience so far, we have not seen a student with not a very good profile receiving admits just because they have emailed a lot of professors. So don't spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, I have received a number of personal messages about the LTM program, and especially regarding which field do we cater to: biological sciences, humanities, organic chemistry. So one thing which I would like to make very clear right now is that the LTM program is field agnostic, which means that when we take students, the thing which we take pride in is teaching them the process of doing research, teaching them the process of having the first publication. And this process is actually independent of the field which you are in. The process which takes to publish in humanities, let's say material sciences, mechanical, computer science, is usually the same. So in the LTM program, whatever the field you are in, we have usually catered to people belonging to all kinds of domains last year and this year as well. And this is the same for scientific machine learning as well. So there is some questions about organic chemistry in scientific ML, biological sciences in scientific ML. It's a topic which is awesome for integrating multiple fields with ML. Don't be too stressed out about the field and whether the LTM or the scientific ML program will cater to that.
There are a few people who asked about biotechnology projects, molecular biology. So if you ever have interest in combining the field of this with machine learning, SciML is the best possible field. I'll briefly, in 2 minutes, will give you an idea what exactly it is. There are many phenomena happening in many different fields, like mechanical engineering, heat transfer, many different fields. There are phenomena scientists have studied a lot, and they have tried to model it using differential equations. And but the problem is none of these models are actually good. They are never perfect, and they never align with real world data. What scientific machine learning is doing is, or rather what traditional machine learning does is, they will throw this entire model in the basket, and they will just look at the whole phenomenon as a black box model. So they have a bunch of data, they have a deep learning model, and they will have an output. But in scientific machine learning, what we do is we consider the fact that, okay, painstakingly people have identified the dynamics of these systems, and they have tried to put it in good differential equations, but it's not adequate. How can we augment its capability using machine learning? And this is the essence of scientific machine learning. And this framework, it's also called as universal differential equations, differential equation plus neural network framework. And I don't think this is difficult for anyone to learn. We in fact have two 11 standard and 12 standard students currently in the scientific machine learning program, writing papers with us. One of the students, I mean, of course they are very smart. We are not taking anything away from them, but they, like one of them finished the entire SciML course part of it in 1 week, and now he's working on a paper with us. And it's a very good paper about battery degradation, like the dynamics of battery degradation and how you can model this using scientific machine learning. And this is applicable in biotechnology, molecular biology, in astronomical systems, in mechanical engineering, applied mechanics, in computer science, and also in general fields like modeling, like spread of COVID, for example. So we have a mega project on COVID in which multiple people are planning to collaborate at once. So it is SciML in a nutshell. So if you have a field of interest, and if you are ever interested in combining ML into that, so that you can kind of propose your own profile as a niche profile. You are good at ML, but you are also good in your own domain. If that is something that you are interested to do, just check out the SciML.
Some questions about the difference between SOP and personal statement. So there is actually a very fundamental difference. In a personal statement, you write about some of your personal stories which you have encountered in your childhood, which has shaped your personality. Maybe something happened in an event where you're speaking and you're motivated to improve your public speaking skills. Maybe what motivated you to become a CS engineer? Was it some robotics kit which your parents brought and then you assembled it? Then you also can mention about the hard work maybe done by your parents, which has shaped your personality. So every single student will have their own set of incidents, but it should be again linked with your thread, which you have mentioned in SOP. Not that much, but it should clearly kind of convey how you have become this kind of a personality. So generally, we have seen that we had included 2-3 incidences in our personal statements. Some universities do not ask a full-blown PDF or a document. They ask us to write it in maybe 100, some set of 2-3 paragraphs. So in that case, you just have to narrate a few set of incidences. But yes, there is a fundamental difference. It's not a good idea to simply fine-tune your SOP and then tailor it as a personal statement. You have to start writing it from scratch.
Yeah, I had actually shared a link in which you could access the free version of my own personal history statement. My Google Chrome is experiencing some issues, so what I'll do is I'll share the link to that along with the recording to this webinar, so you can just have a look at it, and that will give you some idea what's the difference between personal statement versus statement of purpose. Another thing that people will soon become is stressful. Like there are 4 months for your application if you are fall 2025 applicant, and the stress will only increase, unfortunately, and the only thing you can do is try to reduce the magnitude of it. So we'll be conducting, of course, one webinar every 2 weeks or twice a month, basically. If you think if we cover a certain topic, if your stress level will go down, feel free to let us know. We'll be more than happy to talk about that. But other than that, the only thing you can do is like plan your time and do your work, nothing else. So that's the only broad level takeaway that we can provide you. And there are a lot more questions that we could not answer, obviously because of the time constraint. But if you have if you have one or two small questions for which we could not answer or we did not answer, just send us an email. If you have large set of questions, it will be difficult for us to respond to you in email.
There is one question about whether LTM caters to students or industry professionals, and how do industry professionals manage their time. So actually half of the people in LTM are industry professionals at this moment, and the way they manage their time is mostly through working on weekends. So we have a milestone based approach in the LTM where we divide the tasks into milestones, and then every week there are some milestones to complete. So that way it's been working very well so far. I think we have reached almost the end of our webinar. So I just want to thank everyone for attending. There were so many people today, and 300 was the maximum limit, so we could not take more students. I've got some emails from students who could not join, but don't worry, to all those who are here, we'll be sharing the video recording with all of you mostly by tomorrow evening. And if you are interested in the SciML program or the LTM, or just have any doubts to discuss, just email us at this hello@flywithesh.com, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, thank you all, guys. Have a good one, and we'll meet again. So most likely our next event would be around mid of August. We have not decided the exact timing, but we'll be letting you know. Just follow us on LinkedIn or send us a connection request. If we have bandwidth, we can. Otherwise, just follow us. We usually post about our next webinar on the LinkedIn 4 or 5 days before the event, so you will get to know. But otherwise, please stay calm. Please stay in the best of your mindset. We really want to wish you all the best from the bottom of our heart. Thank you all, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.